Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this very momentous occasion. The ILO and the International Cooperative Alliance Asia Pacific is jointly organizing this event to commemorate 20 years since the adoption of the ILO 193 resolution on the promotion of cooperatives. It was passed in the year 2002. The recommendation has been a tool for strengthening cooperatives' advocacy towards the public sector, creating public policies, national laws, and enhancing awareness about cooperatives as economic and social actors. I would like to invite the Regional Director, ICA Asia and Pacific, Mr. Balasubramanian Iyer, to deliver the welcome remarks.
Okay, thank you, Ganesh. And am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to the webinar on the ILO Recommendation 193 and the Social and Solidarity Economy, Perspectives from the Asia Pacific region. 2022 marks 20 years since the adoption of ILO Recommendation 193 on promotion of cooperatives. The ICA and the ILO have joined hands today to organize this webinar to celebrate 20 years of Recommendation 193, hear perspectives from across the Asia Pacific region on the Recommendation 193 and the conclusions on social and solidarity economy from the International Labour Conference, which was held in June this year, and also to look ahead. Recommendation 193 is comprehensive in that it looks at the role of governments to provide supportive policy and legal framework, adoption of public policies which are guided by cooperative values and principles, and the relationship between workers and organizations in the attainment of sustainable development goals. The term SDG was coined way before the 17 SDGs in 2015. And cooperation both at the national and the international level to promote exchange and to work together. In June 2022, the tripartite constituents of the ILO held a general discussion on decent work and the social and solidarity economy during the 110th session of the International Labour Conference and adopted a resolution and conclusions affirming the role that the social and solidarity economy can play in tackling the challenges of the post-pandemic era and fostering a planet and people-centered future of work. It is interesting that the social economy has been mentioned in the ILO text since 1922, and cooperatives, a key organizational form under the SSC, have been a critical partner for the ILO since 1920. So our relationship between the ICA and the ILO goes a long way back, and there is ample reason for the ICA and the ILO to be celebrating our joint work. I'm thankful to all our speakers and moderators who have readily agreed to be part of the webinar and to share their experiences with us. I look forward to this webinar, and I'd also like to thank all the participants who have joined and look forward to this webinar and hearing perspectives from across the Asia Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iyer, for your enlightening words. Now we would like to invite Dr. Chandrapal Singh Yadav, the President, International Cooperative Alliance Asia Pacific, to deliver the opening remarks. Dr. Yadav, can you give me 1 second? Due to some technical issues, Dr. Yadav is not able to join at the moment. We shall move on to Mr. Satoshi Sasaki, Deputy Director, ILO India Office and Director, Decent Work Team South Asia, to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, partners, and cooperators around the world, good morning. On behalf of the ILO Decent Work Team for Country Office for India, it is my pleasure to deliver this keynote speech on this special occasion. Cooperatives have been an important partner of the ILO in advancing social justice through decent work and in promoting sustainable development for more than a century now. I would like to extend a warm welcome to International Cooperative Alliance Asian Pacific, the co-organizer of this webinar. As the representative of cooperatives worldwide, the International Cooperative Alliance has held a general consultative status since the establishment of the ILO. This webinar organized by ILO and the International Cooperative Alliance Asia Pacific is timely, given that this year marks the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the ILO Recommendation 193 on the promotion of the cooperatives and the 10th anniversary of the International Year of Cooperatives. In June this year, the 110th International Labour Conference adopted resolution and conclusions concerning decent work and social and solidarity economy, or these days for the popularly called the SSE. The conclusions include an international definition of the SSE, which is the first time an international definition was adopted within the United Nations system. Cooperatives, associations, mutual societies, foundations, social enterprises, self-help groups, and other entities operating according to the set of the SSE values and principles are included in this definition. This is a significant milestone as SSE entities are values and principle-based organizations that put people over profit at the heart of their operations. The world faces numerous interrelated economic, social, and environmental challenges exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. SSE entities have stepped up to support their numbers and communities across the sections. SSE entities have shown their resilience in response to crisis, demonstrating their capacity to retain jobs and some even experiencing the job growth. They have shown us how to build back better in a more inclusive and sustainable manner. In Asia and the Pacific, cooperatives constitute the backbone of the SSE as in other regions. Overall, the region accounts almost 500 million cooperative members, which constitute 46% of the total global cooperative membership. Cooperatives operate across diverse sectors from banking, agriculture, retail, renewable energy, housing, care, and increasing platform economy. SSE entities, including cooperatives, play a vital role in creating and sustaining jobs. This is aligning to the SDG goal number 8. Employment in or within the scope of the cooperatives concerns 279 million people in the world. or which accounts for 9.46% of the employed population. Of these, 27.2 million are directly employed by the cooperatives. Substantial population of the global workforce. In Europe, cooperatives account for 4.6 million workers. In Africa, 1.4 million, Asia, 7.7 million, and in Americas, they employ approximately 1.7 million persons. The SAC has great potential to advance decent work through formalization of the informal economy by creating economies of scale and increasing the informal workers' bargaining power and collective voice. In India, for instance, where the informal sector accounts for more than 90% of the workforce, the Self-Employed Women's Association, SEWA, which is a national union of 1.8 million informal women workers, supports its members in their own cooperatives, helping them attain social protection, work, income, and food security. In other areas, cooperatives are contributing to green jobs linked to the environment, agriculture, and impact insurance. These cooperative activities enable them to pursue their livelihood and access services with dignity. I hope I have been able to highlight some of the significance of the SAC and more specifically the cooperatives during my speech. As stated by the ILO Director General Guy Ryder, it is imperative that cooperatives are not only organized as temporary instruments for crisis response, but as fully fledged enterprises in their own rights. And that they are seen as a permanent and valuable sources of decent work creation, in addition to advancing equity, participation, and social objectives. Today, it is an excellent opportunity for us to celebrate the many achievements made since the adoption of the ILO Recommendation 193 in 2002. Reflect its key lessons and discuss how we can work together to apply this recommendation and the ILC conclusion on the decent work and SSE in Asia and Pacific region. So I hope you will enjoy and will benefit from this webinar today, and wish you a successful event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Satoshi, for your words and taking us through the history and the background of the ILO Recommendation 193 and its importance in today's context. I would like to invite Dr. Chandrapal Singh Yadav next to deliver the opening remarks for the event. Chandrapalji, you are muted. Kindly unmute.
Dear cooperators, greeting from India, hoping all of you are coping well with the COVID-19 pandemic and the recent economic crisis. I am delighted to be present here today to share my thought on this momentous occasion to celebrate 20 years of adoption of the ILO Recommendation 193, promotion of cooperatives. The ILO Recommendations 193, adopted in 2002 at the 90th International Labour Conference, has been tool and catalyst across the globe, the strengthening cooperatives advocacy towards the public sector, creating public policies, national law and enhancing awareness about cooperatives as economic and social actors. By incorporating the International Cooperative Alliance's 1995 definition of cooperatives, the recommendation promotes cooperatives as an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural need and appreciation through the jointly owned the democratically controlled enterprises. It stress the crucial role of government in establishing the appropriate political, legal, and industrial framework. This is important in today's context, as many countries, including India, are in the process of drafting law, policies, and amending their act. Today, the international cooperative movement comprises of 1 billion cooperators from 3 million cooperatives around the world and contributes to sustainable economic growth, quality employment, and provides job to 280 million people, which is 10% of the world employed population. Cooperatives are human-centered and values-based enterprises. Therefore, cooperatives enjoy greater trust among consumer, workers, and their members in almost every sector of the economy. This has been instrumental in improving the visibility of cooperatives to the common man by raising public awareness on cooperatives through evidence-based advocacy and sensitization to cooperative values and principles. The ILO and ICA have been working hand in hand for promotion, betterment, and development of the cooperative across the world. In June this year, the 110th session of the International Labour Conference held a general discussion committee on decent work and the social and solidarity economy, SSE. The conclusion mentioned the ILO recommendation 193 on promotion of cooperatives twice as one of their fundamental references. Deeply rooted in cooperative values and principles, cooperatives have stood the test of time through their human-centered business model. During this time, when humanity is faced by multiple crises, the importance of cooperatives as community-owned enterprises that place people before profits is now more than ever in building a better world. The need today is as important of ensure ILO recommendations 193 are strongly advocated and ensure when looking at cooperative policy and law. The recently concluded ILO conference in June on decent work and SSE give us an added bid to promote cooperatives. The webinar is a good opportunity to hear how ILO 193 has been promoted and adopted across the region, and to hear how the conclusion on the SSE can be taken forward. I wish the webinar all success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Yadav, for your kind words and also outlining the importance that ILO recommendation 193 has had both at the international and at the national levels, and how even India has now looked at major reforms in policy as well as in the cooperative law at the national level. As you mentioned, in June 2022, the 110th session of the International Labour Conference held a general discussion committee on decent work and the social and solidarity economy. The committee also proposed detailed conclusions to the conference, and a resolution was adopted at the plenary of the conference. The conclusions included an international definition of the SSE. For the first time, such an international definition was adopted within the United Nations system. These conclusions do have a significant impact for the cooperative movement, as cooperatives, as values-based and principle-based organizations, like you mentioned, are among the important components of the social and solidarity economy. Now, we would like to move on to a video message about the conclusions from the International Labour Conference that was recently concluded from Ms. Simel Esim, the head of the ILO Cooperatives Unit.
June 2022, the tripartite constituents of the International Labour Organization held a general discussion on decent work and the social and solidarity economy. This general discussion took place during the 110th session of the International Labour Conference. The International Labour Conference is the ILO's highest decision-making body, gathering 187 tripartite delegations from member states, including governments, workers, and employers' organizations. And this conference meets every once a year in June. And for the first time in its history, this year, the conference was held in a hybrid manner. And some say also this is the first time that in its 103 years of history, the International Labour Conference discussed the social and solidarity economy. Others may say, no, this is a return of this topic to the International Labour Conference, as the social economy was mentioned in the International Labour Organization texts as early as 1922. And cooperatives, a key organizational form that fall under the social and solidarity economy, have had a long and illustrious history at the International Labour Organization. In fact, the cooperative movement has been a critical partner for the ILO since the inception of the organization. The first ILO Director General was a cooperator. The ILO established a cooperative service in 1920. Cooperators are mentioned in the constitution of the ILO under Article 12, and to this day, the ILO remains the only United Nations agency with an explicit mandate on cooperatives. As the representative of the cooperative movement worldwide, the International Cooperative Alliance also holds a general consultative status at the ILO. It is, however, accurate to say this is the first high-level, comprehensive debate in the United Nations system on the social and solidarity economy. There is, in fact, a great momentum growing for a UN resolution on the social and solidarity economy from member states. The European Union adopted a social economy action plan in December last year, and the OECD has adopted recommendations on the topic. Going back to the International Labour Conference and this committee where decent work and the social and solidarity economy was discussed, there were a set of conclusions adopted on the topic by the committee, affirming the role that the social and solidarity economy can play in tackling the challenges of the post-pandemic era and fostering a planet and people-centered future of work. So what did the conclusions say? The conclusions had 5 parts. The first part sets the scene and highlights the close alignment of the ILO constitutional mandate on advancing social justice and decent work and the social and solidarity economy. It references the ILO Constitution, including the Declaration of Philadelphia, relevant international labor standards and declarations which acknowledge the contribution of the social and solidarity economy in promoting decent work and sustainable development. The second part of the conclusions provide a clear and comprehensive definition of the social and solidarity economy that is based on a set of values and principles. This is, in fact, the first tripartite definition of the social and solidarity economy agreed upon at the international level. And I would like to share that definition with you here. The social and solidarity economy encompasses enterprises, organizations, and other entities that are engaged in economic, social, and environmental activities to serve the collective and or general interest, which are based on principles of voluntary cooperation and mutual aid, democratic and or participatory governance, autonomy and independence, and the primacy of people and social purpose over capital in the distribution and use of surpluses and or profits as well as assets. Social and solidarity economy entities aspire to long-term viability and sustainability and to the transition from the informal to the formal economy and operate in all sectors of the economy. They put into practice a set of values which are intrinsic to their functioning and consistent with care for people and planet, equality and fairness, interdependence, self-governance, transparency and accountability, and the attainment of decent work and livelihoods. According to national circumstances, the social and solidarity economy includes cooperatives, associations, mutual societies, foundations, social enterprises, self-help groups, and other entities operating in accordance with these values and principles of the social and solidarity economy. In the third part of these conclusions, guiding principles to address challenges and opportunities in promoting decent work and the social and solidarity economy are underlined. One element that prominently emerged from the discussion included the role and the potential of the social and solidarity economy in addressing the needs in the care economy and in facilitating the transition from the informal to the formal economy. Other areas highlighted on the contributions of the social and solidarity economy include just transition and environmental sustainability and creation and preservation of jobs. The conclusions makes a specific mention of social inclusion and in particular emphasize women, youth, and disadvantaged groups such as the unemployed, persons with disabilities, migrant workers, and indigenous people. Part 4 of the conclusions tackles how the ILO constituents, namely governments, workers, and employers' organizations, can play a major role in fostering the social and solidarity economies, economic, social, and environmental contributions through an inclusive and equitable social dialogue process. This section underlines the obligations of the constituents to respect, promote, and realize the fundamental principles and rights at work, including in all types of social and solidarity economy entities. It also notes that governments, workers, and employers' organizations are encouraged to establish a conducive environment consistent with the nature and diversity of the social and solidarity economy to promote decent work and harness the fullest potential of social and solidarity economy entities. The fifth part of the conclusions provides recommendations and key principles for the International Labour Office action. They underline that the office should, with relevant partners, focus on the provision of legal and policy advice, advocacy, knowledge generation, exchange and dissemination of good practices, training and education, capacity building, and development cooperation. The office now has the mandate to promote greater coherence across the multilateral system through these conclusions, including through the United Nations Task Force on the Social and Solidarity Economy in the promotion of decent work and the social and solidarity economy. An annex to these conclusions provides a non-exhaustive list of relevant instruments of the International Labour Organization and the United Nations. Where do we stand now? The conclusions provide sufficient guidance to the ILO constituents and the International Labour Office on the promotion of decent work in and through the social and solidarity economy for years to come. We are now in the process of turning these conclusions into an office-wide strategy and action plan. This strategy and action plan will be presented at the next governing body of the International Labour Organization that will meet in October, November of this year for their consideration. In shaping and implementing this office-wide strategy and action plan for the next 5 years, we will keep engaging with ILO constituents, our historical partners, the cooperative movement, and the wider social and solidarity economy organizations. We look forward to advancing the social and solidarity economy in the service of decent work and sustainable development with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Simel Esim had taken us through the role and the importance of the solidarity economy, and also the recently concluded International Labour Conference conclusions on decent work and SSEs, outlining how each of these entities have a major role to play in promoting the solidarity economy at the government, employees, and the worker organization levels. She has also outlined a very key important factor where marginalized groups such as women, indigenous communities, differently able, and all sorts of marginalized communities are brought onto the mainstream and foray through the solidarity economy entities. I would like to move on to the first panel discussion on the recommendation 193 as a milestone for strengthening the cooperative identity, looking at what we can learn from the efforts over the last 20 years to promote cooperatives. I would like to request the speakers to kindly switch on their videos and come online. The panelists, Mr. Kelvin, Mr. Joseph Belota, chairperson of the CDA, and Dr. Dat Chu. The moderator of the session would be Mr. P. Santosh Kumar, Director of Legislation of the International Cooperative Alliance. Over to you, Santosh.
Thank you, Ganesh. Namaste, Yadavji, and great to see friends, old friends on the screen. It's a pity that we are not able to meet in person, but we shall, I hope, in the near future. A very warm welcome to one and all to this panel on promotion of Cooperatives Recommendation 193, a milestone for strengthening cooperative identity, lessons from the efforts over the last 20 years to promote cooperatives. Please allow me to express warmest cooperative greetings to all of you on behalf of our President, Dr. Ariel Guarco, our Board of Directors, my colleagues and co-workers in the ICA system spread across the world, and our Director General, Mr. Bruno Rollins. Friends, I would like to remember and remind ourselves of the irreversible havoc that man has and can cause humanity and our environment, and take this opportunity to assert the urgent need for the application of the cooperative and ethical values of self-responsibility, solidarity, social responsibility, and caring for others in our own lives, as the world marks the 72nd anniversary of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings today. Peace, ladies and gentlemen, is perhaps the only word which is explicitly missing in the otherwise complete international legal instrument that the promotion of cooperatives recommendation is. Cooperatives have, through their inherent and international character, fostered and tried to build positive peace for communities and its people, because it is people's needs and aspirations that are at the center of the cooperative nucleus, which is beyond political, religious, and all other biases. We hope in the earnest that cooperatives, their networks, and of course the wider social and solidarity economy movement persevere to maintain calm and tranquility among the peoples of this world. Friends, I'm also thrilled today that the United Nations has proclaimed the theme for this year's International Youth Day as intergenerational solidarity, which, among other things, is bound to nurture a culture of humility among all and advance a temperament of learning, caring, and mindfulness of others. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered to celebrate 20 years of the promotion of cooperatives recommendation, which in many ways has been the holy book for cooperators, policymakers, and legislatures around the world in revising and updating the legal and policy frameworks for cooperatives of all kinds, of all types, in all countries, economically advanced or otherwise. For it recommends a consultative and inclusive approach to reform, and taking a cue from the 2001 UN guidelines on creating a supportive environment for cooperatives, it emphasizes that policies must promote education, which is an express cooperative principle/practice since 1844, at appropriate levels of the national education and training systems. Recommendation 193 is a successor to the Cooperatives Developing Countries Recommendation 1966, number 127, which was adopted on the heels of the second occasion in history when ICA clarified the cooperative principles by asserting and articulating the principle on cooperation among cooperatives. I am sure lawmakers and policy experts continue to marvel at the inclusion of the statement of self-identification adopted by the constituents of a global NGO into the legal text of an international labor standard, in other words, international law. I do mean the ICA statement on the cooperative identity, comprising the definition, values, and principles of cooperatives, which was adopted by the members of the ICA on behalf of 700 million cooperators in 1995 after years of global consultations, a process in which, among others, the countries of Asia-Pacific played a significant role and leadership. On behalf of the workers and members of the ICA, please allow me to thank the ILO for having created an important platform of the ILC, which in 2002 gave us all the ILO Recommendation 193, which enshrines the components of the cooperative identity statement in its text, giving member states an internationally accepted compass in developing and promoting cooperatives nationally. The recommendation is divided in 7 parts, including the preamble, an annex, and 6 parts that provide most apt guidance on the promotion of cooperatives for ILO constituents, governments, employers, and workers' organizations, as well as aim at facilitating international cooperation to achieve the objectives of the recommendation. This aspect of internationalism through cooperatives, by cooperatives, and for cooperatives, I feel, is crucial for a movement which is truly international as it is local. Friends, I would like to appreciate the efforts of my colleagues at the ICA Asia and Pacific, my mother region, for having convened this webinar and given us all the opportunity to reflect on the past with the aim to build a stronger future. I say this in the context of the recently concluded 110th session of the ILC, which among other things has given us a detailed explanation and definition of SSC and its guiding values and principles. It is terrific that social enterprises rooted in solidarity will be able to find an important place and space on the highest policy tables in the world. I'm grateful to Mr. Ganesh Gopal and Mr. Balasubramanian Iyer for having given me the opportunity to moderate this session, which has an impressive array of speakers from institutions that have greatly influenced the progress of cooperatives in the region and worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker is Mr. Kelvin Sargent, specialist in sustainable enterprise development and job creation at the wonderful ILO Decent Work Team for South Asia in New Delhi. He started his tryst with cooperatives as an advisor to the Cooperative Credit Union League in the 90s. And as an ILO focal point on cooperatives, he provided technical assistance for cooperatives in Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, the Bahamas, Grenada, Dominican Republic, and the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Yes, you heard it right, a republic which bases itself on the ethos of cooperation. The floor is yours, Kelvin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and good afternoon. Protocols observed to our previous panel speakers, and also good morning, I should say, to my fellow panelists. May I share my screen, please? I would like to present quickly a PowerPoint presentation, so let me share my screen. Let me know if it is coming on.
Yeah, we can see you, Kelvin.
Thank you. So I have been asked really to, have a discussion on the whole question of Recommendation 193 as a milestone, for strengthening the cooperative identity, and what can we learn that has happened in the last 20 years. Of course, more than 20 years, the whole cooperative movement has been around. But what have we learned, for example? What can we take going forward into the future? And I think, of course, we celebrate 20 years, a very, very important milestone indeed. But even before this, the ILO has been working on cooperatives. You already heard in this morning that, in fact, the ILO came into being way back in 1919, and it recognized the importance of cooperatives as a means of pursuing its mandate to achieve social justice and full employment. And the cooperative unit in headquarters has been around since 1920. And now we have a new mandate on social and solidarity economy that widens and strengthens the work of the ILO. And it has received tremendous support from the ILC. I should also take note that our co-organizer today, very, very important as well in terms of the whole cooperative movement and a critical role we have to play. Well, let us look at, because I think if we are to go forward in terms of what we've learned, we need to look at what has happened in the past. And I think we've already heard some figures this morning that cooperatives are very important in terms of job creation and economic output. There are over 1.2 billion members worldwide in cooperatives, and they provide jobs for an estimated 279.4 million persons, or 9.7% of the world's employed population. The total turnover of the top 300 cooperatives and mutuals account to $2.1 trillion, and that's way back in 2015. I'm sure it has gone up by now. And to me, 2.1 trillion is just a lot of money when I think about it. And in China, urban cooperatives employ over 690 persons. In New Zealand, over 50,000 persons employed in cooperatives. In India, for example, cooperative members have grown significantly over the years, moving from over 316,000 persons in 84-85 now to in excess of 290 million persons. Whereas the Indians say, they talk in terms of lakhs and crore. So over 290 million crore persons, have been involved in cooperatives in India. More than 30 million citizens, for example, and mostly women as well, very interestingly in India, participate in 2.2 million self-help groups. And we have a very important organization, we've heard it mentioned already today, SEWA, the Self-Employed Women's Association. They have over 153 collective social enterprises involving 480,000 women. And the SEWA Federation, for example, they support over 100 women-owned and women-led cooperatives reaching 300,000 informal workers. We heard already this morning how the informal sector is very large, not just in India, but very large in Asia Pacific. You already heard that this morning. So it is contributing to a large part to the informal sector as well, okay? And with the aim of achieving full employment and self-reliance for women workers in the informal sector. The cooperatives have made a tremendous contribution as well to the Sustainable Development Goals. And when we look at the 7 principles of cooperatives, they're actually aligned with some of the Sustainable Development Goals. Concern for community, for example, is all about caring for your environment and those kind of things. We have education and training, very important principle for cooperatives, okay? Member economic participation speaks to poverty reduction and contributing towards the economy and so on and so forth. So I'm saying that the principles themselves are already aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals of the SDG. And if we are to focus on what has happened over the last 2 years, the cooperatives they've made major inroads, for example, in terms of legislation, in Japan, in the Philippines, Indonesia, South Africa, Cameroon, a number of countries. They found that the cooperatives have contributed. There have been legislative changes and whatnot in respect of the cooperative movement. And in terms of policy as well, very important policy in terms of the Republic of Korea, Malaysia, and in India. And I'll say some more about India later on, because there's a policy now of the government to push forward as much as possible. Very important too in terms of training and capacity building. We have a number of tools, my co-op. I talked about working with SIWA. We've done a number of capacity development all over the world, in Laos, in Cambodia, in the Caribbean, in Africa. We've done a number of training and capacity development. Then there's research and knowledge, knowledge, and of course, the importance of partnership, working with the cooperative movement. So also in terms of projects as well, we've worked with cooperatives in the ILO in terms of issues such as the elimination of child labor in all of these countries identified there, the creation of income generation opportunities in conflict disaster affected communities in Ethiopia, Uganda, Sudan, and so on and so forth, promotion of universal health coverage, promotion of decent work in the waste sector in Senegal, in Cameroon, and incidentally, we're also working with them now in India. We have a big project in India on the promotion of waste management in India. And then, of course, trade facilitation in Tanzania and youth empowerment in Cambodia and Laos, all working with cooperatives and the cooperative movement. And when we look at the array of contribution of the cooperative movement to sustainable development and decent work, I mean, they seem to be involved in almost every facet of life. Capacity building and training I've talked about, the green agenda. They've been involved in the rural economy in India and in a number of South Asian countries. Agriculture is very important in these economies. And a number of cooperatives are very, very important in the rural economy, in the agricultural sector. But they've gotten involved in other aspects of the green agenda, moving from, for example, renewable energy, moving to impact insurance, and a number of other areas they've gotten involved too in terms of the green agenda, okay? Supply chains, cooperatives are very important in supply chains. Women economic empowerment and gender equity, number of cooperatives, SIWA, just one, but very important too in terms of women's economic empowerment and gender equity. They formed worker cooperatives in a number of countries. When I was in Guyana, for example, we formed the first domestic worker cooperative in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. That was a really wonderful thing. I remember, people were so happy that we had formed this first domestic worker cooperative in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Really, really a wonderful thing I remember. Future of work, statistics, all of these rights, very important to cooperatives as well, the issues of rights at work. So I'm saying that, they've done a lot of interventions, they've done a number of things in the economy, but there have been challenges. There have been challenges in terms of measurement, because we still haven't been able to and tell the true story. How do we measure what the cooperative movement has done in the areas that it has contributed to? I think we need to do a lot of research, and much more work has to be done in terms of measurement. In terms of the impact, I think we don't sell this story enough. The contribution of the corporate sector to the social fabric of many societies, I think we don't sell that story enough. And also the potential of the cooperative sector, I think over the years have been tremendous. And I think we have a wonderful and a great way to go now, because we now have, of course, further film coming out of the ILO's ILC, okay, on the whole expansion and the whole definition of the whole social and solidarity economy. What does that mean, and how can we implement new policies and programs and so on to contribute to the development of the whole SSE and cooperatives in general. So against that background, we need to ask the question, what have we really learned, okay, in the last couple of years, in the last 20 years to promote cooperatives? And how can that assist us in going forward? I think we've seen, number one, that cooperatives are very relevant in times of crisis. In the Asian financial crisis of 2007, 2008, all the big banks and the credit unions, they all failed, but not one cooperative failed. In fact, the cooperative model withstood the test of time coming out of the Asian financial crisis of 2007, 2008. And now, even when we look back in the last couple of months in terms of the COVID, the impact of COVID and whatnot, cooperatives really showed their relevance, contributing to a great extent, assisting members, assisting people who were being affected by the crisis, introducing, for example, standard operating procedures, helping with masks, helping with sanitizers, educating people about COVID and COVID response, and working with governments to try to implement some of the measures introduced by governments all over the world. So they have really demonstrated how important they are in times of crisis. They are now very relevant in opportunities such as circular and clear economy and in provision of community services. They are making inroads in almost every area of economic to social to the environment, from poverty reduction to women economic empowerment to the rural economy to climate change and green jobs. They are important to women and youth who get training and financial assistance from cooperatives in many countries. And they can be an important model for just transition and the promotion of green jobs, decent jobs. Training and education should always be consistent and constant. Okay, very importantly, for the SSE movement, training and education, we need to remember, we need to be consistent. You need to be, and remember the importance of training and education. And I think I want to argue that governments need to put back cooperatives and now the social and solidarity economy high on its agenda as a model of development, self-help, and sustainability. And I put India in brackets there because the Indian government have decided about a year ago to establish a Ministry of Cooperatives, Ministry of Cooperation, headed by a more senior minister, okay? And this has given a new life to cooperatives in India. I mean, they've already talked about expanding education, healthcare, housing, and a number of areas that they will be going into, not that they were not there before, but giving it life and new interventions and new fillip for the cooperative movement. So I think there has been history in the cooperative movement in the past. Not all the history was good, but now we need to recognize the value of the movement and give it center stage in terms of its role and what it has done and what it can do in terms of sustainable development and moving forward. So that, in conclusion, I want to argue that cooperatives are not temporary, but should be permanent institutions. They are legal aspects of business and they are already legal forms. They will remain valued in decent work. We heard a lot about that this morning, advancing equity, participation, and social justice, which is the point of our outgoing DG made at his address to the ILC a couple months ago. I think that the cooperatives would be very important as we build back better from COVID-19 crisis, and they will remain critical to the future of work. The promotion of cooperatives to advance decent work and sustainable development calls for new forms of cooperation between governments, employers, workers, and societies at large, including civil society. And I think we need to remember that we need a conducive environment for the promotion of cooperatives and SSEs, which should be a priority for everyone. I thank you for listening, and I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent, for a wonderful presentation and very precise conclusions, if I may add. You took us through the ILO's robust and vibrant history with the ICA and its mandate of promoting cooperatives, different levels, be it legal and policy, be it training and capacity building, and your own experience from Guyana that you shared. You also asserted that SEWA is one of the leading examples of cooperatives in the world, and I'd like to add that it's also a spectacular interplay of trade unions, associations, and cooperatives. I think a legal genius had sort of imagined this idea, and the cooperators put it in action. Thank you very much, Mr. Kelvin. Ladies and gentlemen, we might extend this panel by 10 minutes because we started a bit late, so please bear with us. And I do not see the second speaker online yet, so perhaps we go to the third speaker and then come back for some questions, if that's all right. The speaker next is Dr. Dat Chu, Director of the Vibrant and Resilient International Cooperative Department of the Vietnam Cooperative Alliance, or VCA, which is one of the most formidable apex cooperative institutions in the ICA Asia Pacific, and which has partnered with the government at many occasions in ushering periodic reform in cooperative law, and has been instrumental in bringing in international best practices for stakeholders to acknowledge and learn from. A testament of their success in this field is the growing diversity of cooperative types in the national cooperative movement in Vietnam, with forestry, organic, agrotourism, as well as the recent agreement cooperatives have signed with Vietnam Airlines for in-flight meals. Dr. Chu, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. First of all, thank you very much, ICA-AP and ILO for arranging this conference. I think it's very good. And today I would like to share with you a case study of Vietnam and how we set up ILO recommendation 193 as a milestone for our development. So I'm sorry, I'm not making it as a presentation, and I make it full as a report. So I would like to share on the screen, and if later on, if anyone needs my documents, so I can send over to the email and send to Mr. Santos. And back to my presentation, I would like to share with you the case of Vietnam. I think the case of Vietnam is very quite special case, and how we apply ILO recommendation milestone. Vietnam cooperative, we have the new one since 1946, right after we have the independence. And at that time, the cooperative is not like it's not follow the nature of cooperative as ILO recommendation or as ICA recommendation. At that time, our cooperative is a little bit like state agency. At that time, the cooperative, we gather all the resource from our member, and then we work and we act as a state agency. We control, we issue the policy, we manage the people, and we share the profit, and we share the assets along all members. But at the time of the war, because you know, Vietnam, we have the war about 30 years. And at the time of war, this model is very good, because with this model, we can gather a lot of resources to support our military to win the war. But after we reunited Vietnam as a whole nation in 1975, the old model of cooperative began to prove inappropriate in the new situation, because the model of cooperative work as a state agency and gather every property, gather every asset from the member. It's not good. It not create enough incentive for the member. So luckily we recognize and we start to change from 1990. And luckily in 2002, together with the ILO recommendation 193, we have the resolution number 13 from the Communist Party. And 1 year after that, something like in 2003, we have the new law of the cooperative. And from that law, we begin to follow the nature of cooperative. That means the cooperative gradually transformed into an economic organization. It's not a state organization, but it becomes a little bit like enterprise. It follows the rule of self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, and solidarity. And follow the law of 2003. In 2012, we also issue a new law And even the new law of 2012, we follow more about the recommendation of ILO R193 and the recommendation of ICA about the mutual cooperative. And up to now, the cooperative in Vietnam is operate quite similar to the enterprise, but with more inclusive goal than enterprise, because besides profit, the cooperative also looking for the society, looking for the control, looking for the social security. And with the change in the 20 year, from the 2002 up to now, something like for 20 years, we increase the number of cooperative, something like 15,000 cooperative in total. So by the end of 2021, we have totally about 27 cooperative with about 9.2 million member and labor working in the cooperatives. I think that number is quite good compared, because we have to change very, very quickly from the old model as a state agency to a new model as an enterprise, at a self-help and self-responsibility enterprise, following the recommendation of ILO. And up to now, the government also very concerned and very look after the cooperative area. Something like our government have something like 9 group of policy to support the cooperative in Vietnam. And to reach that achievement, something like VCA Vietnam Cooperative Alliance, we have to act very actively to support our member. Something like our goal is to protecting the right and interesting of our member, and the VCA we work at a bridge between the government and our member. Something like we consider us as a bridge between the government and the member. Something like we try to protect our member, and we work with government to make a good policy to protect our member, to protect our cooperative member. And our VCA, we have the nationwide network. We have our member, and we have our agency in all 63 provinces in Vietnam. And I totally agree with Mr. Kelvin Sutton about the way of applying ILO recommendation, because from Vietnam, from our experience, the first thing we need to do, and we need to work very, very, very quickly, and we work very hard, is for raising the awareness of our member, raising the awareness of the society. And through raising the awareness of the society, we can have the effect on the policy maker. Something like in 20 years, we VCA have about 800 national conference at a national level, and we have about 7,000 or something like provincial conference to raise the awareness of the society and to raise the awareness of the policy maker. We invite the policy maker to join the conference, to make the speak, and we invite the member to join the conference to make a recommendation, to make a request to get to the. And beside the conference, we also owe a lot of the training costs for our member to raise the awareness and to teach them how to apply new technology, how to manage the cooperative. I think the training and the educating for the member is something like also one of the most important we learn from our experience. Another thing is that we also gather a lot of resources, about 300 million USD to support our member in 5 areas. The first area we support is to, in Vietnam, we have a special policy. I mean, each cooperative, right after they establish, they will have the support of about at least $1,000 US to support them to buy the equipment and to decorate the office. And we arrange something like 11,000 training course for our member. And we help our member to apply a new technology to help them with the digitalization. The first thing, something like we arrange something like national fair and international fair, so our member can cooperate with other partner, domestic or internationally. And the fifth thing, also one of the most important things, something like we make the policy recommendation to the policy maker, something like it's also very important. So again, before my presentation, I think this is a very good time to for 20 years of, we review the ILO recommendation, because this year is also a very important year in Vietnam, because this year we also review 20 years of the new law of the cooperative, and this year we will make a new law of the cooperative, something like the law of cooperative in 2022, or the latest time in 2023. And again, I believe that even the new law we will get more closely to the ILO recommendation, get more closely to the nature of cooperative as ICA recommendation, something like the seven principles of ICA will follow more. And we will have more support from the government to the cooperative, something like the government, they consider that cooperative become one of the four most important inside the Vietnamese economy. So I believe that this year is very important year for ILO, for ICA, and especially for Vietnam, as we review 20 years of ILO recommendation. In Vietnam, we review 20 years of the new law, and we have a new and we will have a new law for next year. And I do hope that with our experience, with our capability, and with the support from the ILO and from the ICA-AP, we will have a new law, and the cooperative in Vietnam will have bigger development in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chu, and congratulations to the workers of VCA for having done persistently a good job, and the perseverance shown by the VCA in evolving the how cooperatives are perceived in the country. You have asserted many times on the importance that VCA accords to training and education, and which includes the seed capital of $1,000 that you mentioned in your speech. What is clear from your statement is that the recommendation 193 facilitated the evolution of cooperatives from a state agency or a quasi-agency of the state to independent economic enterprises. The evolution is still going on from 1946 to 2003 to 2012, and you have underpinned the importance of creating awareness. And I do believe, and I'm sure the members of this house will also agree with me, that the recommendation 193, among other things, clarified what cooperatives were and what cooperatives are, and which gave us the understanding of what the potential cooperatives can achieve, and which is clear in the case of Vietnam, where the staggering numbers that you shared, 15,000 new cooperatives and since 2012, and the economic worth that you have mentioned. So thank you again, Dr. Chu. It was lovely hearing you speak, and we pride ourselves for having VCA as one of our members. Thank you very much. May I ask Ganesh if Sir Joy is here, the third speaker?
In case Mr. Joseph Encabo is here, from chairperson of the Cooperative Development Agency, Philippines. I think he has not joined, from my understanding. So I think we can move on to the question and answers, Santosh.
Okay, thank you, Ganesh. It's a pity that the CDA chair could not join. It's indeed an excellent organization and institution of the government that is dedicated to promoting cooperatives. I'm sure most of you know very well the work of the CDA, but maybe there is another opportunity where we'll get to hear from the CDA in the context of the ILO recommendation 193. Well, I think now is the time for question and answers. We have prepared a couple of questions just in case the house falls silent, but I think it's important to for all of us to exchange our views, reflections, not necessarily questions. So the floor is open. Please unmute your microphone and direct your questions to the speakers or anyone else. No questions or reflections? Well, okay. While the audience is sort of warm up, maybe Ganesh, you could shoot the questions that we have prepared.
Sure. Santosh, maybe you can do the honors.
Sure, I shall. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the first question to Mr. Sargent from the ILO. The question is the international law framework for cooperatives and by extension the SSE complete with the ILO recommendation 193 and the international legal instruments mentioned therein? Or do you think there is a need for the ILO constituents and per Article 12 of the ILO Constitution, the cooperators, to advocate for a convention to promote, advance and defend the cooperative identity? In short, is the recommendation enough? Should we stop there? Or shall we go for a more stricter legal instrument to ensure wide implementation of the identity?
Yeah.
Universal.
Thanks, Santosh. A very interesting question, really. You know, in the ILO, we talk about conventions and recommendations. And, you know, we put out recommendations and we establish recommendations with our constituents. And that is supposed to provide guidance and establish principles and so on. But very important for the ILO is conventions as well, which is really one of the highest instruments that we have in the ILO. You know, once we establish conventions, it means that our tripartite constituents have gotten together. We've done a lot of work and research, and a lot of things has to happen before you get to a convention. So it would be my hope, quite frankly, that, you know, we can have a convention one day on, you know, this whole SSE and cooperatives and whatnot. I don't think we're done there yet, but I think we have a long way to go. I think we need to have a clear work program and a clear work path. We need to educate, we need to capacity develop. We need to do a whole lot of things with the regions, our tripartite constituents, for them to understand the role of the cooperatives and the social and solidarity economy. You know, the cooperatives in general had a wonderful past, you know, in the 80s, 1780s in a number of countries. But then today with challenges and issues which affect issues of governance, issues of so on. But I think, you know, we're moving away from that now, and certainly the future for the movement looks very bright. Its contribution to national development, its contribution to sustainable development goals, you know, are there for all to see. I think very importantly too, I made the point earlier on the importance of cooperatives and SSEs, not just cooperatives. So we're talking about self-help groups, we're talking about associations, anything that deals with people and putting people first. This is the point. It's about putting people face, the human face of adjustment. You know, it's not just about profits and all of that, but we need a whole new model of development that we've seen the impact of COVID and crisis, and we continue to see it on people. And unless you have institutions that put people first, I don't think we'll go anywhere. And I think, you know, the cooperative movement is putting people first, its importance, its work on the environment, and the fact it's able to interweave in so many places makes it a perfect model, I think, towards to move towards a whole convention. This would be my argument.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Sargent. I think indeed the ecosystem that is evolving right now with the SSC, also a concrete definition and understanding that is building up. I think SSC and cooperatives can complement each other and achieve that legal protection or safeguard that's required by people who constitute cooperatives and SSC at the ground, at the grassroots. So thank you again. And indeed, you did mention about the importance of and the resilience of cooperatives in crisis, which I missed out in my very short summary. So thank you again for reminding us how when the going gets tough, the tough get going, right? So thank you very much for reminding us again of the role cooperatives and SSCs play during a crisis. We note that Mr. Joseph Balota Nkabo has joined. He's the third speaker of this panel, so I shall quickly introduce him and invite him to speak. Sir Joy, you have roughly 8 minutes to make your presentation because we are running against time here. And there are some participants who are in the Far East, and it's already evening, I suppose, there. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Joseph Joy Balota Nkabo, Chair of the Cooperative Development Authority of the wonderfully cooperative nation of the Philippines. He was appointed to the coveted position in 2021 for a period of 6 years, and rest assured, the cooperative movement in the Philippines is in solid hands and stable hands for the next 6 years. Sir Joy completed his bachelor's in arts, majoring in sociology from Ateneo de Davao University in '97, whereupon he served as project development officer and eventually senior positions at the Philippines Sports Commission. So, Sir Joy, are we going to see some sports cooperatives in the Philippines in the near future? Well, friends, he's also a member of the Mediation and Conciliation Committee of El Grande Multipurpose Cooperative, as well as a member of the Tagum Cooperative, one of the foremost credit cooperatives in the country. He's currently completing his executive doctorate degree in leadership in public management from the University of Makati. The floor is yours, Mr. Nkabo.
Mr. Nkabo, you're muted. We're still unable to hear you, Chairman Nkabo. No, for some reason, we still can't hear you.
Why don't we take a question in the meanwhile, and Mr. Nkabo, you could maybe restart your computer, might take 3-4 minutes. Yep. Okay, great. So, friends, do you have any questions for the speakers so far, or should we go to the questions we've prepared? And trust me, the question we've prepared will not be as interesting as the thoughts that are going on in your mind. So I really encourage you and urge you to unmute your microphone, and no questions are bad. So please go ahead and ask something to these experienced voices that you have heard today.
Hi, Santosh, if I may.
Yes, yes, Shantanu. Kindly introduce yourself and maybe.
Yes, hi. So my name is Shantanu Biswas. I'm very recently started working with the ICA-AP based out of Dubai on a new project that they're doing with the Ministry of Economy here around building a national strategy and enabling the cooperative movement in the UAE. So my experience is very, very limited. So actually my question is to the speakers from maybe Barbados, from Vietnam, if they could share a little bit around what their experience and has been around understanding how the government could support the building or the development of a national strategy to make sure that the cooperatives get the resources, the agencies, the support, and the enablers. What could those high-level big pillars of strategic thinking be, if there's any thought around that? So my question is, how does the government help the cooperative sector in a strategic way and building some foundational blocks for them? It's quite new and nascent out here. Thanks. Any of the speakers, if they would like to respond to that.
Maybe Dr. Chu, would you like to share your thoughts about how governments support cooperatives and how they can support cooperatives? I see his screen is frozen. So the pitfalls of technology, although it's getting us all together. But well, maybe then I look at. Oh, he's back. Dr. Chu, please.
Oh yes, I like it. Okay, so Mr. Santos, can you repeat again the question? Yeah.
So the central part of the question is, how do you think governments or the state can support cooperatives, and specifically in developing a cooperative strategy, a cooperative development strategy?
Yes, from our case, the Vietnam case, I would also like to stress again, it's quite special because if we not move from zero to the new one, but we have to move from one direction to another direction, something like from the direction of the national agency to the direction of something like the enterprise. Yes, we have to change very quickly and tremendously. So to do that, we have something like we have to start at the highest level from the Communist Party. Something like in Vietnam, the Communist Party is the top level. Something like the Communist Party, we must set up a long-term strategy to develop the cooperative. Something like in 2002, we have a 20-year strategy to development for the cooperative development, and we put this as one of the most important tasks for the long-term strategy in Vietnam. And based on the long-term strategy, we make a law for the cooperatives based on the new strategy. And inside the law, we put that the government have to support the cooperative economy. And even inside the law, I can send you as a reference letter. It mentioned clearly that the government will support the cooperative in something like 5 areas: from the land, from the tax, from the financial, from the education, from the technology transfer. We put inside the law something like, so when supporting cooperative inside the strategy, inside the law, so every government agency, they will follow it. But that's only one hand. Another hand, I would like to stress again that rising awareness and educating and training is very important, because even we have the law here, but no one understands the law. I think it's nothing can work. So it's like two hands. So we will have two hands. One hand is something like strategy, policy. Another hand is something like rising the awareness and training and educating, something like that. The other hand is the role of VCA, something like we have to do that. And even for the hand of policymaker, we also work very closely with the government to make a good policy, to make the correct policy to the cooperative. And if a policy is not suitable, we say we are the one who have to make a recommendation to the government that policy is not so good, so the government should change the other policy. So that's the way we are working right now in Vietnam. And I do hope that my answer can
Thank you. That was very educative. Thank you.
Thank you, Santanu, for the question, and Dr. Chu for the answer. I think it was wonderful. Let's check if Sir Joy's microphone is working now.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. My apologies for the technical glitches. You know, technologies would really give us some quite headaches, but we still have to familiarize everything that is at hand in terms of technology. But nonetheless, good afternoon, my dear co-op leaders across the world. Thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to quickly formally introduce myself. I am Joseph Balyota and Cabo. I'm the chairman of the Cooperative Development Authority of the Philippines. And it is a great opportunity for me to share to you briefly and most likely comprehensively our response as a government agency to the cooperative sector that we're serving in our country. You know, this is also in response to the recommendation 193 on the promotion of cooperatives. You know, our agency as a government agency has 3 facets. 1, regulatory, 2, developmental, and the latest, the recent one, based on the new law, is the quasi-judicial. Now, on the part of the CDA, for us to preserve the integrity and the legal personality of our cooperatives in our country, is the nature of our agency can also be considered as a substitute legislative agency. That what is not written in the law, what is not written in our constitution or in the law that mandates us, can be created and formulated through the board of directors. It has a legislative function somehow, but it is within the spirit and within the intent of the law that would serve the best interests of our sector. So therefore, our Cooperative Development Authority provides supportive policies, legal and institutional frameworks in order to develop and progress the capacity of our cooperatives in our country. Remember, in the Philippines, I'm not so sure with the other countries of setting, we have 22 types of cooperatives here. So it is so diverse, so complex. That's why our formulation of policies should also be somehow adaptive and always consider practices based on cultures, based on norms, based on what they want to achieve, what is acceptable to the community. And we're doing this before we download memorandum circulars or special policies or laws or directives. We must able to consult the sector. That is the very important element on why our agency is so successful in implementing policies, guidelines, rules, and regulations, because we are consulting time to time the sector that we're serving, so that we were able to get also some salient points and important points intended for them. Second, rapid, simple, affordable, and efficient registration process. We have to streamline this bureaucratic process here in our country. We want an ease of doing business for our sector, so that other associations or organizations or individuals who are interested to form cooperatives, our agency, our government, based on the directives, the existing laws and policies, is responsive, proactive, and it caters the will of the common interest of the common individuals who wants to be a cooperative. Simplified reportorial requirements. When I assume office in the Cooperative Development Authority, my first directive to them is to simplify the reportorial requirements. We don't want that the cooperatives will be engaging and doing too much task, preparing the requirements, which we know it can be simplified and it can be consolidated. So why give 20 copies of one type of report? Well, in fact, they can even, digitize it and submit it through email or what. So we're able to simplify all the process in general. We talking about digitization. We are now encouraging all cooperatives to be involved in the digitized process through registration and submission of reports. No need for us to provide the hard copies, because that would really that would eat up too much time. In the technology today, all sectors must be digitalized, and digitizing our programs, all units involved, is one of the advocacies and strong programs of our government agencies today. Second, another thing is encouraging the development of cooperatives as autonomous and self-managed enterprise. The beauty of this is that we allow every cooperative to think out of the box. We want every cooperative to engage business that is not the usual for them, but to explore more, to capacity building, to build up more enterprise for them, managed by them. If we allow them to manage and have this autonomous concept, we allow them to develop new ideas, innovations. The government should not control. We should give them the liberty to think what is good for them. You know, the state, the government in the Philippines recognizes the principle of subsidiarity. So we have to develop every potential of the sector, initiate and regulate their own ranks and the promotion of the organization, their training, everything, all aspects about it. Another thing is the promotion of policies aimed at allowing the creation of appropriate reserves, part of which at least could be in the visible and the solidarity funds within cooperatives. They have to maximize the resources. They have to make use, and we have to regulate them. We have to monitor them, because the funds intended for every co-op is the funds of every individual, of every member. Remember, every member of the co-op are also co-owners of the cooperatives. Meaning to say, their reserves, their funds, their money in general must be taken care of. We don't allow co-op officers to malverse or to abuse the funds because of their power or authority. That is why one of the facets of the Cooperative Authority, Development Authority, is quasi-judicial. We can file a case against abusive co-op officials, corrupt officials. The use of funds, the most important thing is that it is for the stability of the cooperatives and to meet its purpose. We don't want we want the funds to be transparent to every individual in a cooperative. Provisions of broad consultative framework and measures for the oversight of cooperatives on terms appropriate to their nature and functions with respect to their autonomy. So we were able to create a consultative body as a mechanism to provide us more possible creations of regulations, policies, and direction setting. Meaning to say, we were able to build up regional cooperatives organizations, the sectoral apex organizations, and the National Alliance of Cooperatives. So it is in 3 layers. So we are really touch-based now. We go to the grassroots, we immerse ourselves, because we need to create a consultative body, a consultative mechanism. You know, we believe that once our agency grows, we want also our sector to grow with us alongside, parallel growth. It should not be a one-sided growth. The development should not only be for government, because government is for the people. So if the sector grows, if the sector progress and develop, our agency will also develop. It should be hand in hand with each other. And lastly, the inclusion of workers. This is the most important thing. The inclusion of workers cooperatives as a type of cooperative under our law, the Republic Act 9520, or the Philippine Cooperative Code. Under the law, it is a cooperative organized by workers, including self-employed, who are at the same time the members and owners of the enterprise. Its principal purpose is to provide employment and business opportunities to its members and manage it in accordance with the cooperative principles. So the Cooperative Development Authority, my dear friends, my dear cooperative leaders, is a worker member refers to a member owner who works in a cooperative for is deployed to a principal who has availed of the services offered by the cooperative. As its business activity, this cooperative may engage in labor and production, including contracting and subcontracting arrangements in support of its own main activity. Among the qualified members of this type of cooperative are self-employed. Self-employed are those individuals who have their own personal occupational capacity put to productive use, applying their own capital jointly with other self-employed persons. And to add more, the policies and programs to promote cooperatives is that it is embedded in the Constitution. That's why the Cooperative Development Authority, as an agency, is we promote the viability and growth of the cooperatives, instruments for social justice and economic sustainability and development. That's why, in response to the ILO R193, the Cooperative Development Authority protects the welfare of its members, its workers under the cooperative sector. So that is the common, that is the response, rather, the recommendation of the Cooperative Development Authority in our country. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, my dear friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Encabo, for taking us through the movement in the Philippines and also clarifying a lot of work that you're doing in building the movement and having a parallel growth for the agency that is dedicated, the state agency that is dedicated to cooperatives. So I think the crux of your presentation was successful legal framework, policy framework will depend on successful consultation and involvement of the with the cooperative movement. You said a lot of things. I would love to share all of them. But I think in the interest of time, please allow me to thank all the speakers of this panel, a wonderfully put together panel of Mr. Kelvin Sargent from the ILO, Dr. Chu from the VCA Vietnam, and Chairman Encabo from Cooperative Development Authority of the Philippines. Chairman Encabo, just a final point that I'm a big fan of the Republic Act 9520 and your laboratory cooperative, so just on the record. So over to you, Ganesh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Santosh.
you.
Thank you, respected speakers, for this wonderful first panel. Now, in the interest of time, directly jumping into the second panel on towards a strategy and an action plan on decent work and the social and solidarity economy. We will be having three speakers in this session in the order. Ms. Mirai Chatterjee, Chairperson of the Self-Employed Women's Association from India, Ms. Juhi Lee, the Manager of International Cooperation from ICA-AP in South Korea, and Dr. Denison Jayasuriya, Head of the Secretariat for All Parliamentary or Party Parliamentary Group in Malaysia on Sustainable Development Goals. We will have this session moderated by Ms. Lawrence Kwok, the outgoing Secretary General of the Global Social Economy Forum, GCEF, from South Korea. Over to you, Ms. Kwok.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ganesh. Good morning, good afternoon to you all. Welcome to this second panel of the webinar on the ILO Recommendation 193 and the Social Solidarity Economy Perspectives from the Asia Pacific region. My name is Laurence Kwok, former General Secretary of GCEF. I have ended my mandate by the end of June, and I think my successor, Aude Saldana, she's also present in this room. We have transferred the Secretariat of GCEF to the city of Bordeaux in France. But for those who are not very familiar with GCEF, GCEF is a global network of local government and cities working with social solidarity economy organizations and networks. It was founded in November 2014 in Seoul, Republic of Korea. And currently we are working with 86 members from 36 countries, including 27 local government, 8 national associations of local governments, and 51 social solidarity economy national and international networks. As the moderator of this panel, before introducing our speakers of the panel for their sharing, I was also asked to to make my contribution based on my experience, in addition to moderate this panel. So let me begin to thank the International Cooperative Alliance Asia Pacific and the ILO for organizing this webinar in timely manner for Asia Pacific region. I think it is a very important occasion. And our second panel with the team towards a strategy and action plan on decent work and social solidarity economy is raising very important question to us all. So it is asking actually, what is our strategy and action plan to respond to great challenges in current context of post-COVID-19 pandemic recovery, but also with major global crisis of food, energy, livelihood, employment, climate, and ecology. To answer to the very first question, which was asked to all speakers of our panel, including myself, let me share my experience from GSEF perspective. How GSEF, as the global social solidarity economy movements, worked in an emerging space with a rapidly growing, transformative, community-led alternative to market-driven capitalism, aimed at systemic change to build an economy and society that place people before profit. As I said, GSEF as a global network of local government and social solidarity economy organizations and networks working together in partnership has been actively advocating for the recognition of social solidarity economy as a key strategy to promote decent work and to achieve sustainable development goals. We have been inviting local and national government to listen to social solidarity economy actors before they develop any public policies and legal instrument to promote social solidarity economy as a localized or global strategy in generating decent work, productive employment, and improve living standard for all. GSEF has been working in order to respond to those challenges by creating and facilitating opportunities for the exchange of good practices, by influencing government and policymakers to recognize the role and potential of SSC, by giving a voice to member organizations and networks in discussions at global level and in global political process through advocacy actions and support, and by facilitating access to funding opportunities, by providing access to technical support and expertise on various issues through a pool of expert and capacity building programs, and by building alliance with all social solidarity economy stakeholders together at local, continental, and global level, such as the UN Task Force for Social Solidarity Economy, ILO, OECD, European Commission, etc., etc. We have actively documented also with evidence-based data and outcomes delivered by the social solidarity economy actors to make it known that SSC as an alternative and viable strategy for more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient development to all government and all national and international decision makers. We have jointly worked with the UN Task Force for Social Solidarity Economy, ILO and OECD and etc. to call all stakeholders and government to recognize the role and great potential of the social solidarity economy for a broad-based, job-rich recovery with decent work opportunity for all, which were very open, more visible during the time of crisis, such as the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis, but also more recently during the COVID-19 pandemic all over the world. So it is therefore timely to discuss the value-added actions of the social solidarity economy and its role in advancing social justice through decent work at this panel to promote sustainable and resilient development, which put people at the center of concern. Although we often think that the majority of social solidarity economy organizations and enterprise work for the achievement of economic democratization embedded in Sustainable Development Goal 8, creation of decent work and quality employment. However, many social solidarity economy organizations and enterprises are also working for the well-being of vulnerable populations, thus produce interesting and important synergies with other sustainable development goals, accelerating sustainable and inclusive economic growth, coupled with poverty reductions and inequalities by improving livelihoods, social cohesion, gender equality, and incomes of the vulnerable populations. So I would say that the spirit and transformative vision of the Agenda 2030 is already embedded in the DNA of the social solidarity economy, although none of the 17 social sustainable development goals mention about this. I'm sure that our professor Datuk Denison Jayasuriya will speak also about this, but I believe that precisely due to this characteristic of the social solidarity economy, its role and the contribution would be even more important to respond to great challenges we face today in order to develop a strategy at all levels that should correspond to its magnitude of challenges. Despite of our effort, the social solidarity economy is still not sufficiently recognized by national and international decision makers, and also by public for its role and potential. I would say it's more in Asia Pacific region. For that reason, I congratulate the recent decision of the 110th section of the ILO conference held in June 2022 to adopt the conclusions of the general discussion and the resolution concerning decent work and the social and solidarity economy, requesting the Director General of the ILO to develop a strategy and action plan on decent work and the social solidarity economy to give effect to the conclusions for consideration of the governing body at its next section in November 2022. I think this is a really great achievement and very important development for the future of decent work and social solidarity economy. I'm now more impatient and excited to listen to our eminent speakers today who will share their visions and strategies and good practices on how to overcome the current obstacles in order to promote and mainstream social solidarity economy into the national and global agendas for decent agenda. I know all of them individually, but anyway, let me introduce our three speakers who will speak first up to 7 minutes for the very first question that we have asked them to respond. The question is, the global social solidarity economy movement is an emerging space with a rapidly growing transformative community-led alternative to market-driven capitalism aimed at systemic change to build an economy and society that place people before profit. So I would like to invite, first of all, I think Ms. Mireille Chatterjee, chairperson of the Self-Employed Women's Association in India. Mireille Chatterjee is the director of the Social Security team at SEVA in India. She is also managing trustee of Swatiya Seva Trust. She is responsible for SEVA's healthcare, childcare, and insurance programs. She is currently chairperson of the National Insurance Bima Seva Cooperative Ltd and actively involved with the ROC's Swastika Health Cooperative, of which she is a founder. Both cooperatives are promoted by SEVA. She joined SEVA in 1984 and was its general secretary after its founder, Ella Bhatt. Ms. Chatterjee serves on the board of several organizations, including Public Health Foundation of India, Save the Children, Pradhan, etc. She was advisor to the National Commission for Enterprise in the Unorganized Sector and is in the advisory group of Community Action of the National Rural Health Mission. She was also a commissioner in the World Health Organization Commission on the Social Determinant of Health. She was a member of the National Advisory Council, appointed by the Prime Minister of India in 2010. She was conferred to a Global Achievement Award by the School of Public Health, Johns Hopkins University. Ms. Chatterjee has a BA from Harvard University in History and Science and Master's from Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health. Ms. Chatterjee, you have the floor. I think we are a little bit behind of time, and I think you are a little bit in rush, so I would like to invite you first as the first speaker.
So thank you very much, Sister Lawrence, and namaste and greetings to all sisters and brothers. I hope to be on the call as long as possible and very respectful of my co-panelists. Sister Lawrence, if you would permit, my understanding was that we were supposed to start with a few reflections from our own experience, and I see Ganesh nodding. And hopefully those reflections will answer some of the questions you put. So with your kind permission, may I proceed? And I could request Ganesh to just share the the PowerPoint immediately. And fortunately, the first couple of slides I will go through swiftly. Next, please, because both Brother Satoshi-san and Brother Kelvin have spoken very kindly about SEVA. Our current membership as a national union is now 2.1 million. 2/3 of our members are rural women workers of the informal economy spread across India. But importantly, I want to stress that this is a value-based organization and movement. The values of Mahatma Gandhi, which happily coincide very nicely with the values of our cooperative movement. And through praxis, through organizing informal women workers, actually we were led to the cooperative movement, or what we call the joint strategy of union and cooperative, so that we help our sisters move towards self-reliance, which we believe is not possible without full employment, which has already been mentioned by several speakers. Next, please. I mentioned the joint action of struggle and development through union and cooperatives. In a minute, I will just share in the next slide that through organizing women for minimum wages, for workers' rights, we realized that in labor surplus economies like ours, not just in South Asia, but perhaps most of the our region, Asia Pacific, we have to come up with constructive alternatives to exploitation, as has been mentioned. Next, please. And that led us to cooperatives and also formalizing the informal in a country like India, where more than 93% of the workforce is informal and jobs are hard to come by. We learned very quickly that cooperatives are a very viable and constructive alternative. As we struggled for minimum wages, as you can see in the slide, it was our SEVA sisters who said, why don't we work for ourselves? And our very first cooperative was SEVA Bank, the world's first women's cooperative bank, set up almost 50 years ago. In fact, SEVA is celebrating 50 years this year. And in another 2 years, 50 years of our first cooperative. And that then in turn led to other cooperatives over time, as you can see from the slide. And we found, really by accident, by experimentation and by consultation, as mentioned by Brother Joseph, so very important, that really this is a very important strategy, a joint strategy, and that our strength lies in collectives like cooperatives. So the first lesson I would like to share is that solidarity organizations like cooperatives are an important intervention in the labor market for decent work. And as I said, a constructive alternative to the exploitative systems that many of our co-citizens are trapped in. Next, please. The Cooperative Federation was already mentioned, so I will not dwell on this, only to point out that out of the 110 cooperatives developed over the last 30 years, 88% of them are still active and viable, which is much more. At least in India, the startup rate is about 10% of startups remain viable. So look what happens when small women's cooperatives, they may be small, but they're financially sustainable, they're self-governed, and they remain active even after 30 years. The other important point here I want to stress is the difference of sectors, which has already been mentioned. In the early days when we began to register childcare cooperatives, healthcare cooperatives, we were told this is not possible. The cooperative registrar flatly refused, and it took us 2 years to register our childcare cooperative, another 2 years to register our healthcare cooperative. So one of the things, if we want to promote solidarity organizations, I think we have to think out of the box, as Brother Joseph mentioned already, and welcome new sectors of the economy. Why not platform cooperatives? Why not create an environment that enables different sort of non-traditional forms of business and cooperation? Next, please. The other thing that we learned is, although personally I'm a firm believer in cooperatives, but what we learned from the Indian and South Asian experience, and also our sisters on the African continent, that cooperatives don't work everywhere. Cooperative type organizations work, collectives like self-help groups, farmer producer organizations, even companies that may run by workers on cooperative principles. But in some states in India, for example, the laws are not at all favorable towards cooperatives. They have a government person on the board, and we've recently, in fact, had several struggles, which I will not mention here, in some of the states where SEWA is active. But the guiding principles are the same. I won't read them out because you can read them on the screen, and these are very well known to this audience. Next, please. A recent, in fact, just before the pandemic, our SEWA Cooperative Federation converted itself into a women's enterprise support system. If we want to promote the solidarity economy, if we want to promote solidarity organizations, particularly of the poor and most vulnerable in the Asia-Pacific region, particularly focusing on women in the informal economy, then this kind of support is required, because these small, tiny local cooperatives need a lot of support, whether it's capacity building, enterprise development, linking up even with government schemes. Happily, as you all heard, we now have a Ministry of Cooperation. We have a government e-marketing portal. In fact, even as we speak, our Minister of Cooperation is inaugurating a cooperative, deeper cooperative involvement in the government e-marketing portal. But how to access this? This is very difficult for small, local, grassroots women cooperatives. So this is where women's enterprise system, and I would submit, if we want to promote decent work, then it's these kind of systems and support systems that are required. The other quick point I want to make is that in our experience, most of these solidarity organizations, especially those run by women, are really quite small. Their shareholders are roughly 100 to 500. So the model is, small, as close to the grassroots, retain that spirit, retain the close connect with members, but then federate. So you build your collective strength that way at the state level and the national level. Next, please. We had a lot of discussion since morning about building resilience. And indeed, if there's one thing this pandemic has taught us, it is how important cooperatives and such solidarity organizations are for the very survival of our sisters and brothers in our countries. Look what happened, 65% decrease in household incomes. Many of our sisters reported that they cut back on food. We saw malnutrition level of children going up. But on the positive side, 71% of women in our survey said they got work and survived because of their cooperative. Their cooperative gave them work, their cooperative dug into their reserves and gave them cash benefits, as you can see in the box. The cooperatives also immediately, and the Federation responded with emergency relief, and reached people quickly, because already we were closely connected, providing working capital, food, social protection, and so on. Next, please. Yeah, this is just showing you the integrated approach and the swift, the agile movement of cooperative and the Federation, which was able to reach large numbers of people through the cooperators who rose to the occasion. When others were afraid, it was the women cooperators who were on the front lines, who were providing the information, providing the emergency relief. So lots of lessons there as well. Next, please. This is just to give you a quick snapshot. I must say the cooperative movement, in this case, the UK cooperative movement, joined hands with us. And we were able to provide working capital. Look at the small amounts. The maximum amount, total amount, in fact, is about 84 lakhs, which comes to less than $1 million US. And with that amount, we were able to help 11 cooperatives across India with working capital and 300 micro entrepreneurs also connected to savings and credit cooperatives. So this shows what can be done with small amounts of capital. And this is another lesson if we want the solidarity economy to survive and thrive. The last slide that I have is some of the lessons we have learned. Key is organizing, of course. We all know about that because we are in this business of organizing, but this is the hard part. The building of the solidarity, the creating of the membership-based collectives and cooperatives, which, as all of us have said since morning, are not only sustainable and inclusive, they close all kinds of gaps, gender gaps, inequality gaps, build resilience, and also, as someone said, one colleague, promote peace and harmony. I think it was Brother Santosh. The importance of the integrated approach, and also I think another lesson for future action is that women's cooperatives and other people's cooperatives show how decent work can be operationalized. Often our governments, often the outside world needs that evidence. They're not convinced that it's possible, but it is possible. It's also a possible solution to the issue of migration, which is a very big issue in many of our countries. So if there's local, decentralized livelihood support through cooperatives, why would people leave their homes and families? We've already spoken about social protection and its importance, but this itself can be cooperativized. So in our experience, healthcare, childcare, insurance cooperatives. So they're both providing a service and they are also cooperatives. Digitization, how to bridge the gender digital gap. If we are in our solidarity organizations, it's easier for governments and others to invest in digitization and digital literacy. I've already spoken about financial services. Just small amounts of capital go a long way, but we need to invest. Private investors, governments need to invest in solidarity organizations. And finally, enabling policies and laws. Much has already been said about this. I really appreciate the consultative approach of our colleagues from the Philippines. Government of India is also having a number of consultations with the new ministry, but I would like to say here that it's important for our autonomy to be safeguarded. I think certain laws like in Asia and Africa and most of the world, women are the farmers, yet land titles and the names only of men. And so any benefits that women and their cooperatives, they're not able to access them because they go straight into the men's bank accounts, not into women's bank accounts. And finally, to your question, for synergy, I think the importance of partnerships. Those of us who are organizing cooperatives at the grassroots must do that more, faster, better, hone our skills, but we also cannot do it alone. So we need governments, we need private investment, and we need the evidence, as has been mentioned, because for those of us who work at the grassroots, we see the evidence day to day, but we need to convince the investors that this is the way forward for a just and equitable future that works for all and also works for Mother Nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mireille Chatterjee. I think each and every time I listen to your story and history of SEBA, is so amazing and is again and very inspirational. And I think that you have touched actually that the theme of this panel, actually how we could develop the strategy and action plan, and not only at the individual grassroots SSC organization as cooperative, etc., but to create more collective environment and conditions for several different social economy actors, such as self-help groups, unorganized informal economies, and also cooperatives can federate and can build a more synergetic and solidarity effort. And I think you have touched a lot of those issues both in terms of value-added development of social solidarity economy and guiding principles. The history of SEVA itself is that story. But I think you have to leave very soon, so I would like to let our audience to raise some questions before you leave about your experience, and especially I think what you have just shared during the COVID-19 crisis. Even though those members who are most seriously affected, more than 66%, losing their income, but also their rate of survival and resilience is so remarkable, and they really survived, and they are able to sustain their entrepreneurial activities. So as I think you have said, it will be very important to draw lessons from your experience to develop a legal instrument as well as public policies targeting specifically for women, and those especially women in informal sectors. I think because especially for Asia Pacific region, this is a very important question and challenge that we need to address. I'm just trying to see whether there is anyone who would like to ask a question or share your reflections before our speaker, Ms. Mireille Chatterjee, leaves the room.
If I may, very briefly.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you, Mireille. Calvin here. It's always a pleasure to hear you and the good work that SEVA is doing, and lovely to be on the same, event with you here today. And I think, the wonderful work that SEVA has been doing, sitting here on, the women and formalizing them, and, really doing a wonderful work in India and elsewhere as well. It's not just India you work in, but you also work elsewhere in South Asia as well. And you must not forget that. So congratulations again on this wonderful presentation. And I look forward to continued engagement with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sesson. Is there any? Yeah.
Sorry, Sister Lawrence. Yeah, yes? Can I just say that I'm going to stay on till at least 1:30 because I want to hear my co-panelists, but I may not be able to be there for all the questions at the end. So the one thing I do want to say, which I didn't touch on, is that most of the cooperatives, which are small, local, decentralized, particularly those run by women, are also very respectful of the environment. And I think in this atmosphere of climate change, all of our countries are experiencing all kinds of weather conditions lately. I think cooperatives, particularly those run by women, which are close to the land, which are close to our forests, have a lot of lessons, particularly those run by indigenous peoples of our country who live lightly on the earth. We have a lot to learn from them. They are lean and green, and the nature of their economic activity, whether it's farming with reduced inputs like pesticides, whether it's waste recycling, are inherently respectful of Mother Nature. And then, as I said, they're local and decentralized. And many of them also, as I said, are lean. And we have in India a phrase which we call jugaad, which is that they use limited resources. Whatever resources they have, they use very creatively. So this is another feature of informal worker cooperatives and those run by the vulnerable sections of our countries. So I just wanted to make that last comment, and I'm eager to listen to others.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chatterjee. If there is no other question directly addressed to Ms. Chatterjee, I think let me invite our next speaker. So our next speaker is going to be Ms. Joo-hee Lee. She's the manager of the International Cooperation at ICA-AP, the Confederation of the Consumer Cooperative in South Korea. I mean, this is one of the fast-growing, most incredibly fast-growing federation of cooperative, consumer cooperative. And actually, Joo-hee Lee leads an international team and works with cooperatives, social solidarity economy, and fair trade organizations. She's also a worker member of SafeNet Development Center and also a social cooperative that provides services to ICA-AP corps and members of the social solidarity economy. Ji Lee, floor is yours.
Thank you. I will share my screen. So good afternoon. I'm Ji Lee. I'm in charge of the international relations of ICA-AP, the Federation of the Consumer Cooperative in Korea. So actually, I received the mail that includes 4 questions about the webinar on ILO recommendation 193 and the SSSO. I think I put some the answers in my the presentation file, and I hope that our experience of the will be some of the help to building the strategy and action plan in the future. So before I begin, I'd like to introduce briefly about the ICA-AP. ICA-AP is the Federation of the Consumer Cooperatives in Korea, and it 100 member cooperatives are included in the federation, and we operate 250 stores called the Natural Dream, and about 4,000 people are employed. So ICA-AP mainly provides eco-friendly organic private brand to our members, because that although we are the Federation of Consumer Cooperatives, we have producers cooperative in the federation. So together between consumer members and producers, so we have built, operated the factories, the 60 industrial complex called the Natural Dream Parks together, and developed brands such as Healing Food and Yummy Yummy. So because due to the time limit, I like to introduce about the social economy of Korea. Although we had a social economy for a long time, the Korea's social economy began to rise in the 1990s when the Asian financial crisis occurred. And since 2000, diverse SACs have been emerging and growing in Korea due to the series of status enacted. So there are 4 major types: the social enterprise, the cooperatives, and village companies and self-sufficiency enterprises. For example, the number of cooperatives has increased significantly due to the, thanks to the 2012 Act, but many other cooperatives remain small. So for the detailed the Korean social economy stories, please refer to the links shown on the slides. Actually, in Korea, there's a number of programs such as funds and loans and education for the social economy in Korea, but many challenges remain, I think. So I think the challenges mentioned with the resolution on decent work and the social and solidarity economy are ones that the social economy of Korea is also experiencing. So in this regard, I like to briefly introduce the effort ICA-AP has made with this Korean social economy organizations. So first things that we put a priority for the Korea's social economy is that although there are so many the social economy organizations, they still remain small. So we think the providing infrastructure or opportunity for capacity building is so important for them to maintain their businesses and develop their activities and businesses. So, for example, small scale social economy enterprises face difficulties when they develop market in the early stage of their business. So ICA-AP has we would like to contribute to developing this market for them. So so we continue to introducing good products and social economy services to our members, because these companies make environmentally and socially good products. So we can introduce products that meet the product standards of ICA-AP and also expand other businesses through them. So in 2021, which is a challenging year due to the pandemic, so ICA-AP cooperated with 25 organizations wishing to sell their products at natural drink stores and its online mall. Also, we developed the products based on each other's resources. So as the representative example, the power of a social economy, this is a gift set jointly developed to increase the sales of the social economy enterprises. So social economy organization enterprises that employ people with disabilities or youth designer cooperative or the self-help enterprise that encourage the development and independent of the people all worked together in cooperation with ICA-AP. So the next one is the to raise awareness and develop the sector of the social economy to provide education and foster the next generation of export. This is so important for us. So we made agreement with 3 the universities to open the department about the social economy and cooperatives. For example, the Sangong University in Seoul, they opened the graduate school of social and solidarity economy. And we decided to provide a scholarship for those who study social economy and the cooperatives. And at the first stage of the startup, we provide a counseling and education based on our experience that we have provided to our member cooperatives about the how to establish the cooperative or how to build their business plan or how to make ideas to sell other products or spread the ideas to the public. And one of the products that we have proceeded for years is that the small research support project and with the ICA Cooperative Institute. So we provide a scholarship and provide the funds for anyone who want to study about the social economy or those who have an idea about the startup or social economy and cooperatives to provide the scholarship and funds to build the businesses and develop their ideas and the sort. So next one is the since the majority of a consumer cooperative were built in 1980s to protect environment and farmers who suffered from the chemicals of the agriculture. So there is a background of our history of the consumer cooperatives. So the climate actions and the environmental activities is so important for us. So the natural, so we have the foundation. So we provide a fund for those who wanted to act and also participate in these climate actions to work together. And also the consumer members of the ICA-AP, they established its own the organization called Climate Action, Consumers for Climate Action. So this is a non-profit organization established by consumers in last year. So they work to create a sustainable society through a consumer movement in which consumers directly participate and act for the climate actions. So they promote the eco-friendly products and activities together with the other social economy and raise awareness of how the social economy the work to realize the sustainable development the goals, especially the climate change and the sustainable consumption and production, so, those like that. So the lastly, I like to mention that lots of the social economy organizations and cooperative suffered from the COVID-19, but they declare they will not reduce the staff because of the COVID-19. So this is quite the national campaign for the social economy organizations. So lots of the social economy organizations participated in the part. And many other big cooperatives, the organization prepaid the products and the services for those small social economy organization to develop and maintain the businesses, even though during the pandemics. So I think the networking and the partnership and the working together is so important in Korea and even other the international platform or local or regional platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joo-hee. I think that you have illustrated very well how can we as individual social economy actors foster synergies for collective action and contribute to the emerging global solidarity economy. I think starting from your experience of the Federation of Consumer Cooperative as ICA-AP, but you have developed SafeNet, which has fostered an environment and the ways to cooperate and to build inter-cooperations and solidarities among different social economy actors to foster synergies which are very grounded and very impactful actually for producers, consumers, and even for the researchers and students and young people who would like to know more about the social economy and cooperative, as well as actually that you are reading consumers to get really engaged in climate actions. It's a very interesting actually development and story of cooperative, consumer cooperative. But I'm just trying to see whether there is anyone who is asking question to you, but I'm very mindful for the time constraint since we are a little bit behind of time. So if no one is raising directly question to her presentation, you can think about it, and I will invite our next speaker, who is a very well-known friend to me as well as to the social economy organizations. He's the Dr. Denisin Jayasuriya, Dr. Denisin Jayasuriya. He is he's the principal research fellow at the Institute of Ethnic Studies. He holds a PhD in sociology from Oxford Brookes University, United Kingdom. In March 2018, he was confirmed practice professor in public advocacy by the National University of Malaysia. But he is also co-chair of the Malaysia CSO's Sustainable Development Goal Alliance. But he is currently head of the Secretariat for the All-Party Parliamentary Group Malaysia and Sustainable Development Goals. But also he is known to us as the former president and also the very active member of the RIPES Asia and more known as ASEC. He has also a member of various national Sustainable Development Goal Steering Committee, and now also that under the Ministry of Economic Affairs since 2016. And in October 2017, that UN office in Malaysia awarded him the UN Award for Special Contributions for the Promotion of Sustainable Development Goals. And then he was appointed by the Malaysian Foreign Minister as member of the Malaysian Consultative Council on Foreign Policy, and since October 2018. So, Professor Datuk Denisin Jayasuriya, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you all can hear me clearly.
Very good.
You do. Okay.
We hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I'm the last speaker in this marathon list of speakers. I think it has been extremely interesting, informative, as well as setting a new agenda globally in the post-COVID period, a message of hope and resilience of how grassroots communities are organizing themselves in a very effective, sustainable, resilient way. And I think we must do more to capture this. Now, I took the theme that was given in this panel, which is towards a strategy and action plan for decent work and SSE, to chart out some possibilities for us collectively, and especially for the Asia Pacific group here, the cooperative movement, together with ILO Asia Pacific, that's hosting this meeting, to see some possibilities of joint action and collaboration between grassroots groups, national groups, to make an impact at the Asia Pacific level through regional institutions and groupings, because Asia is not just the largest population. It has high poverty numbers. It's the fast-growing economies of the world in this region, but also major challenges that we face, but innovations that are there across the region. So I have 5 brief points as collective action that we can consider, and maybe the organizers might want to take this further and give some institutional support. I think today we heard very clearly the cooperative movement's commitment to an alternative economic model, and that the various resolutions, conclusions at the global level has set the policy framework in a very clear way. And this will enable, I believe, national cooperatives in the Asia Pacific area to take a lead in coordination and networking for the SSE. Now, the SSE movement that I'm part of, which is ASEC, the Asia Solidarity Economy Council, is a loose network of civil society grassroots movements, including cooperatives, self-help groups, foundations, trade groups that are committed to a social solidarity approach that takes economic, social, environment, collective organizing and accountability, as well as values. Actually, we share many things in common with the cooperative movement, but at the grassroots, we might work together, we might not work together, and definitions and historical differences might separate us. But the recent ILO statement that was so much of reference that was made gives a very clear definition that can bring us together, and that definition provides a much more inclusive and holistic environment. So if the cooperative movements at the national level and the Asia Pacific level can play a key role, then I think the ILO resolution and conclusions in your June meeting and all the various steps could be executed. The cooperatives have large institutions, institutional frameworks, but often more newer groups feel that it's too institutionalized and rigid, too close to government and so forth, that it doesn't have the dynamism of newer movements that are challenging the markets, challenging government, and empowering the people. So I think this is where we can find new synergies under the theme of decent work and SSE, as well as stakeholder partnership under in this context. Second, I believe as ILO has played a very strategic role, and Lawrence is part of that. I have been part of that global movement on the UN task force on social solidarity economy, the leadership that ILO has provided, the 17 UN agencies and the CSOs or the NGOs who have observer status at that, the ILO Academy on SSE and the training that it has provided around the world, and the kind of literature and material, including what the UN Task Force has brought out in all the case studies, the academic rigor and writing, and the website and the documentation, and more recently, the encyclopedia on SSE. I've been part of that editorial group, and they have brought out a very important document of various articles from around the world. So as ILO has provided this at the global level, Geneva-based, whether at the Asia-Pacific level, ILO at UN ICA-AP in Bangkok, could give a similar leadership and undergirding of United Nations agencies and bring people together. Many of us are part of the SDG annual meetings in March, various other meetings in Bangkok that's being coordinated. But this is something ILO could enable, including capacity building, like the ILO Academy, fund mobilization that is needed through development partners and others. That's my second point. Third, I feel, and I think many points were raised on this, is the policy advocacy at the national level. While ILO or the international levels and the UN multilateral agencies might have brought out good policy recognition, yet it's at the national level, whether we heard of the kind of things happening in India, Indonesia, South Korea, Vietnam, the Philippines, including Malaysia, that brought out a new policy, not just on the cooperatives and the funding and institutional support, but also on social enterprises and the accreditation and the funding scheme. So an enabling policy environment at the national level is critical. And this is something we can see of experiences. And I know Lawrence and others have been documenting on local governments playing a key role in SSE, in renewable energy, in waste management, in various other forms, alongside poverty, women empowerment, and so forth. So this is something, a lot has been happening, but I think it's not been well documented and articulated. Fourthly, I believe even today, we heard some excellent case studies, whether it was Vietnam, whether it's South Korea, whether it was India, excellent case studies of concrete, dynamic, and the scale of outreach is large. Funds utilized were small, but the impact on lives of people were great. So best practices, and I think Kelvin's paper highlights some very good initiatives, but how then do we present them in a way that they become national policy agenda and examples for social protection, for the transition from the informal sector to the formal sector. These are points that we discuss. There are points in the ILO recommendations and conclusions. So best practices, how do we bring academic institutions along this line in this context that we can see. and as a strategy. Individuals can't do it. Individual organizations might not be able to, but we might need a much stronger framework of collective action. And finally, how do we foster the alternative economic model? Because the dominant model, whether it's India or China or the capitalist framework, we're not against markets and capitalism, but I think it's important for us to look at the balance between economic, social, environmental, governance and values, the visibilities, the post-COVID, whether academic institutions, and I know the cooperative movement, like in Malaysia, has a college, it's trying to upgrade into a university, that these become the curriculum for a new MBA, not MBA of a capitalist, how to become rich and richer and exploitative, but one which is much strong. And the cooperative movement, I know even your college in Oxford and so forth has a very strong, I know it has had a very strong leftist inclinations, but we are now talking of viable economic theories and so forth. It's really a challenge to mainstream SSE in Asia with the models, the experiences, the success stories, the achievements of partners around. And we have institutions like ILO and its resolutions to back the initiative. It's not just the initiative of individuals or disgruntled economists, but viable alternatives that it's proved itself to be sustainable, impactful in the COVID period and the post-COVID period. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope we can work together. And I hope at the Asia Pacific level, the cooperative movement can give the kind of leadership, and I'm sure movements like ASEC or REPAIRS or other movements that we are with, it's bringing us together and enabling us to be a powerhouse in Asia. And I hope we can do it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Datuk Tennyson Jayasuriya. As usual, it's very clear, very well already organized, the messages that you get through. And I just want to repeat the last summary that I think is very important for me. So you said document on local initiative and good practices, and build a collective action not only with social economic actors, but also with local government, with academics, researchers, and academic institutions. So to foster with them synergies and to contribute to the emerging global solidarity economy. And I think this is a very important strategy that we should probably incorporate into all our actions and an action plan. Since we are very much behind of time, and unless that there are very burning and urgent questions or comments that you would like to address to the speakers, I'm just checking very quickly because I don't see any questions raised in the chatting space. But if not, I think you must be all very tired because we are doing a very marathonic webinar. So I don't see any hands raised or any comments. So before we close, and I would like to invite Mr. Joseph Encabo, Chairman of CDA from Philippines, I think, yes. He has an announcement to make. So I would like to give a floor for him to make his announcement, and we will close.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Ms. Lawrence.
Chairman Encabo, you're not audible. Probably.
Yes. Yeah. Please.
A little closer to the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much, moderator, for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to invite everyone, our co-op leaders, our cooperators across the world, especially ICA, in our first Philippine International Cooperatives Expo. That will be next year. And we're going to send invitations to your respective organizations or cooperatives. And I hope that our event will be truly participated by you, as we believe you can impart great ideas, share your best practices to the cooperative sector in our country. So I am looking forward to the participation of the ICA in general and to other cooperative leaders across the world. This is the first, truly the first Philippine International Cooperative Expo. So looking forward to your presence and participation. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph Encavo. I think we will be very, very delighted actually to be invited and to be with you for this expo in Philippines. But also I would like to thank to all our speakers with very innovative and very impactful actions that they are undertaking in each country, but also in very important area of challenges, global challenges that we need to address. I personally would like to thank to the ICA Asia Pacific and the ILO once again, because I think this is a very first time that I really collaborated with ICA Asia Pacific team, although that I have been working all the time with the ICA Global Secretariat and various other entities. But I think we really need this synergies and intercooperation among different social economic actors in the Asia Pacific region. And I hope that this initiative of webinar is not going to be the last, but it's the very first beginning of our synergies and intercooperation. So thank you very much once again to all audience, speakers, organizers, and all those people behind of this webinar who have spent so many times and days to organize this webinar. Thanks a lot, and hope to
so much,
see you very soon.
For your wonderful moderation, and I think your insights working with the solidarity economy, spearheading initiatives in solidarity economy all these years. And I think I would like to thank all the speakers, despite the overshooting of the time and their prior commitments, who have stayed as long as they can. Ms. Mirai Chatterjee, Juhi, Dr. Denison Jayasurya, and of course, Chairman Encavo, thank you so much for inviting all of us for the upcoming expo. I would like to, without any further ado, call upon Mr. Balasubramanian Iyer to deliver the closing remarks.
Thanks, Ganesh, and thank you very much to all our speakers and moderators. It's been quite a long session. We're running over an hour, so I'll not say much apart from saying thank you very much. I think it's been a very informative presentations, taking us through how recommendation 193 has been implemented, its importance in putting in place enabling policies, and the promotion of development of cooperatives. And we have our task cut, because now with the SSEs being given a definition and a mandate to see how it can be taken forward, I think cooperatives have an important role to play. And I look forward to seeing how we can engage with all of you in moving this forward. There are a lot of positives have been talked about. The speakers have mentioned things happening in their countries, what they've done to make it more enabling, how things have developed on the ground. But I think there have been a few challenges which have been mentioned. I think it will be good for us to keep that in view as we look ahead. As Kelvin mentioned, there are important issues in terms of how do we measure, how do we show the impact I think is important because if we don't have these numbers and we are not able to show clearly, then it just becomes much more anecdotal and just case studies. So I think that's important. The other important aspect which we need to look at is how do we increase awareness across all the presentations. The lack of awareness, be it cooperatives, be it social and solidarity economy actors, is pretty minimal. So how do we increase awareness? And that's where the importance of education and training comes in. I think that's an important area which we need to look at. There was mention about technology and digitization and how we also have support systems in place because it's not just going to happen on its own. We need to also, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown the importance of technology and how we need to leverage it. Technology can't be at the center. We need to leverage it. So how do we do that? And how do we provide support systems? Mirai Chatterjee in her presentation had talked about how they put this in place. I think we need to have good support systems in place. And we also need to, as part of the awareness, we need to also ensure how we get youth engaged into cooperative. I think that's a big segment which we need to be actively looking at, actively bringing in. For if we don't bring in youth, then the future looks quite bleak. So I think we need to be looking at how can we engage, how do we promote cooperatives. We've talked about how dynamic cooperatives are, how in new sectors cooperatives are emerging. And this needs to be, I think, presented to youth and see how they can come on board. Finally, as Dr. Dennison mentioned, we need to, while things are happening at the country level, how do regional bodies, be it the ICA, Asia Pacific, the International Labour Organization, GCEF, ASEF, how do we come together more at a regional level in order to ensure that we not only keep track of what's happening in each country, but then are able to bring together the experiences of the region and to be able to share it with all and see how we can promote it. So quite a lot of learnings from this webinar. So thank you very much to everyone for joining us and your patience in staying through this session. So I'd like to thank you all. Finally, a huge thank you to the ILO team, Simel and Kelvin, who have been very with us from the beginning and instrumental in bringing all of us together. So thank you for your support. And finally, to my team, Ganesh, Shivali, Shri, Mohit, for all your work which you have done in ensuring that we've had a very successful webinar. So thank you again, everyone, for your participation and look forward to our future interactions. Thank you.
If I may request everybody to kindly switch on their cameras for a second for a group photo. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to all of you. Great webinar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.